Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps, and my guest on the show today is Mr. Carlo Milo. Carlo, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. So, Carlo, me and you got connected through my cousin Reja, so shout out Reja. And I also know you've been training him for the last 2 years, and I've seen the results that he's gotten. So, kudos to you. And I've been, as I was mentioning off camera, I've been in a bit of a health kick recently, not in terms of my own health. There's a lot of work to do there. But I've become a lot more interested in health and fitness. And over the last couple months, I've been watching a lot of podcasts in that space. And so many things that I've been told my whole life and people like generally are told I've learned are not necessarily true anymore, or maybe there's a different perspective on it. So I kind of wanted to dive in today into all about fitness, nutrition, the work you do and you have over 10 years of experience, as a trainer. So would love to get your insights into lots of different areas. But before we get into everything, Carlo, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Yep. So, as I said yourself, I've been doing this for about 10 years. And in that time, I was a personal trainer, and I started with that. And then from there, I went into group training and then online training, obviously the kind of sequence it usually is. And I've been working with people to change their body composition. I have a program, which is the Shred in 12 program, which is for people to do a 90-day period where they lose as much body fat as they can and build strength in 90 days. And they have like a before picture and after picture, like transformation, which is like really good, and the results are amazing. So, and every time I post those, I've always got more clients wanting to join because they can see that the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Prior to doing that, I was obviously living in Scotland, and I was at University of Edinburgh Napier. From there, again, as you know, you learn most of your trade outside of university, but that was a good baseline to go from. And then from there, I went over to Texas. I lived in, I was in Texas.
Oh, no way. Yeah. Oh, that's sick. How is it living in the States?
I mean, in Texas is amazing. I was working with little kids, from the ages of 3 years old up until about 14, playing soccer. And yeah, it was really fun. It was an amazing time. It was a part of my life when I was like 19, 20, which is in Texas, and being Scottish is amazing because, you feel like David Beckham to a certain extent. People think you're famous. You're just like, especially like 10 years ago when people wouldn't have went over there as much. Maybe it's different now, but they didn't go there as much. So like being over there at that time in your life was just like, this is insane. And I was always a bit of a person just to get up and go. So then I came over there and I was just like over to Texas. Then from Texas, I went over to back to Scotland, stayed in a place in Glasgow called Easter House, which if anyone's watching this and from Easter House,
shout out Easter House.
You can see why I probably came over here. So I worked in Easter House, and then I went. I got an opportunity to come to Dubai, and then came straight over here, set up my business at a place called Smart Fitness and JLT, and then I just built my business as much as I can from there.
Okay, awesome, man. It's really interesting. So, how did you get into fitness? Was that into like being a trainer and stuff? Was fitness something always a part of your life, or maybe you were just super like athletic and sporty growing up? I'm guessing
that's it.
Coming from Scotland,
just
football.
Just athletic, sporty, loved it. Wanted to be a football player. Never made it as a football player. Then was like, what do I do here? Wasn't an academic focused person, and the system, the school system, didn't really work for my side of things. A lot of people say, oh, the school system didn't work for me, but they've got all A's. I'm like, you talk rubbish. Like, it's just nonsense. Like, they're the kind of person's like, oh, I've not been studying, and then get full marks. Like, most people are like that, whereas I was completely opposite. Like, I was literally the worst person in the year. I didn't like it. It didn't suit me. It wasn't where I was, and I always knew I was pretty smart in that regard of something else. I knew I had the understanding of it, but it wasn't suited to me to have this kind of schedule of school, which you can hear for a lot of people out there who are kind of entrepreneurial. Exactly. It just doesn't work for them. So like that made me just from there, made me someone who was always kind of like focus on what's next. Done the university degree, which was only got in because I did 2 years of college before, because I didn't have the qualifications, which I did sports massage and all this kind of stuff, which was college was better than university. Went from university and again was like, okay, what do I do here? Became a personal trainer just because my mate was like, let's become a personal trainer, which suited me perfectly because I was social. My sales skills are pretty good. So I was trying to get £20 off somebody in Glasgow at that point was a nightmare. So when I came to Dubai and people had so much excess capital, it was just like, like, this is a joke.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
what I mean? There's people who don't care either.
Mm.
So my sales skills were good, and I was able to provide, not just sell the product, but I was actually able to give them the results they want.
Exactly.
Which 10 years ago in Dubai was difficult because, you know, people weren't always that great at what they do. And don't get me wrong, I literally, from what I know now compared to then, is ridiculous. But I was still being able to provide them in a safe manner and
Sure.
controlled in terms of giving them some nutritional advice and stuff. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Listening to what you were saying is, I think when you're talking about, you know, the sales skills, you came here, not only are you a personal trainer, but you built your own business. I think sometimes there's a lot of misconceptions we might have when it comes looking at personal trainers and stuff. What is something that maybe a normal person, quotation marks, like myself, wouldn't understand about the intricacies of the job? Because from my perspective, I'd be like, okay, I go to my trainer, he trains me, and you know, the goal and the reason I'm joining him is because I want to see results, regardless of what my goal is. But it sounds like there's more that goes into it than just simply training me and me giving you like a meal plan.
yeah, well, like there's a psychological aspect to it, right? Like this is, it's completely psychological. Like at the end of the day, you can provide someone with the best meal plan and the best nutrition and the best workout plan, but are they going to follow it? So that's why I focus on community-based training, because at the end of the day, human beings want to be around other humans. That's how we work best, regardless of someone's in all this quotations, introvert, extrovert. I really don't. At the end of the day, when people work alongside each other, they'll be pushed harder, they'll be more accountable, and they'll be more focused on regards to the goal at hand, because other people around them are getting progress. It's the same principle, right? If you want to get rich, you hang around with rich people. If you want to get healthy, you hang around with healthy people, right? So if you can stay around with healthy people as much as you can, and they're, you know, upgrading their life, not only will you become reduce body fat, gain muscle. If I try to create a community of people who are, you know, people who are focused on their work, who are not, you know, dead end people who just go 9 to 5 and can't be bothered to the next stage. Sometimes that can happen, and I'm not going to say that they can't join, but I try and focus on creating a community of people that help each other, who then, you know, push each other with work, because you then create a full community of people that are helping each other in different ways, not just from that, you know, body fat and fat loss. And then you see so many more people prosper, and that's why the community is growing more and more over the years. So I'm working with over 100 people now, online and in the gym, which is being doubled in the last time. And also, it's when I upgrade myself, sometimes what I realize is that the things that I've not known, and like with myself, when I become better mentally, I realize that I level up. And then when I level up, it's like, oh, okay, then you then attract a certain level of client. Because if you've got a client who's really intelligent and he comes across a trainer, he needs to be able to relate to that person. And if he can't relate to that person and they can't have a conversation based around other things, then, which is still on the subject of health, then they'll find it, you know, not engaging, and they'll be like, you know, I need a trainer that's going to, whereas if a trainer just comes up and they don't really know much about life to a certain extent, they're not going to be related to them, and they're not going to be able to help them at that level. Yeah.
And I think I really like what you said. It sounds like it's a relationship. It's more than just, you know, the meal plan, you know, the nutrition. It's a relationship between you and that trainer, because you find people who have had trainers that they love and trainers that they don't like. It's the way I see it, it's kind of like when you go to therapy, you have to make sure that the person that you're working with, in whatever context, is someone that you feel relates to you, understands you, and is genuinely there with your best interests at heart. And one of the tricky things is because, for example, in a market like here, you know, you've been in it for 10 years, there's so many that it can be, I think, because I've heard stories, for example, I've had friends who worked with trainers, you know, guys and girls, and let's say the goal was, okay, lose a couple kilos, and let's say you accomplish that goal, then they'll be like, oh no, but maybe they would maybe push you to lose even more, but you might be like, oh, but, you know, I got what I wanted, I don't need that. But from their perspective as a trainer, it's, you know, they want more, more aggressive results, so that it works as a marketing tool, you know, for them, like, look, like, wow, like you got that, like that 6-pack, that 8-pack, whatever the case might be. So I feel like that creates some, not just in personal training, but in the industry in general, it can create some mistrust, I think, about, all of that. So what's your philosophy when it comes to all that?
I mean, in any industry, there's going to be mistrust because people are doing things wrong financially,
Sure.
this kind of stuff. So in terms of that in general, but in personal training, at the end of the day, you're wanting to accommodate the client's goal. So let's give you an example. Let's say there's a woman, her name's, Sandra, and she's 40 years old, she has 3 kids. Her goal is to just turn up to training, and she just wants to come 3 times a week, and she just wants to become healthy. Well, over time, her goals are going to change, right? So then you just adapt based around how she's going. Her goal might be like, she's like, I'm ready to change my body. I want to lose fat. I want to gain muscle. I want to transform my body. So then you give her more of a push in regards to being more strict with her diet. Like, and also if you go down the line of each client and give them specific targets, at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is quite similar. So it's like, okay, I want to lose fat or I want to gain muscle. Then you just have to accommodate them in regards to, applying the information to them specifically. That might be that you don't give them a nutrition plan for the first month because they just want to turn up to training. So, or maybe you just get them to train, and they don't have to think about the nutrition. And then after a month, you say, okay, well, I want you to add a little bit more protein to your diet. So you have to give them it based around that person, and you have to be smart enough to be able to read a person. And that's why that you have to be a certain type of person to be able to grow in a business where you can see that, okay, I'm going to apply that information to that person and that information to that person. Whereas if you just get a client and you just don't think about them and you just give them the stuff, unless you're an amazing marketer, you've got a bucket with a hole in it because you're getting all this water in, but it's flying at the bottom. So you never really get anywhere. And I've always focused on the client itself.
Sure.
And for most people who come, the goal is the same: drop body fat, increase muscle, become healthier most of the time. A lot of people come with autoimmune issues as well, which I understand. A good basic understanding of autoimmune issues, a lot of it's down to what they eat. A lot of people don't want to accept that. Again,
yeah, I
only know the autoimmune stuff based around the knowledge that I know from trying a lot of the stuff and also working with a lot of clients. I'm not an absolute expert, but what I will say is every time I apply the certain information that I do apply to them, like they have skin issues, they've got gut issues, which the skin issues come from the gut issues, and I take away a lot of the stuff from their eating, then I see a huge difference. And listen, in general, I see a lot of information out there on gut issues, but it's all quite all over the place. When I'm a believer that a lot of people should just eat meat, fish, basic vegetables, fruit, and that's how they're supposed to eat. And you try and follow that as close to 100% as you can with a cheat meal of a pizza with your mates on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And I think that if you do that, you apply that information in that way, you've got a balance of, you can focus on other things in life. Because if you're just so focused on nutrition and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to count my calories here and I'm going to be strict at the weekend, I'm going to eat smaller portions, you end up being controlled by the food and you're being controlled by that lifestyle rather than being like, okay, I'm going to eat this 95% of the time. And then when I go and have a cheat meal, which is a pizza or whatever, you enjoy it more. And I also think that people live in modern day society such gluttonous lifestyle.
We do.
They're like, I deserve this because I've done really well this week. No, you do. I mean, like, I think that's just really pathetic. If your body fat is too high, you need to start saying to yourself, right, do I really deserve this? And what have I been doing wrong? And then fix your body to it's optimized. And another thing is, on top of the optimization of your body, if your goal in life is to get more money, how can you expect yourself to be, unless you're Warren Buffett or something, who's just like of an anomaly?
Yeah.
Then you're who eats rubbish and is so wealthy. There's not 99% of people can't do that. They can't work at an optimum level unless they optimize their health. So you need to think to yourself, like, what's my goal? Okay, whatever that goal is, I would guarantee you 99% of the time, if you fix the fundamental problem, which is your health, your energy, you're erratic, you're grumpy, you fix these problems by your food, your health, the amount of sun you get every day, you can then prosper on other things. But people don't think like that. They'll say things like, I'm too busy. And I'm like, you're not too busy, you're just inefficient. You're also, your systems are not put in place properly and your priorities are not in place. So whereas if you just fix your priorities and you think to yourself, okay, I'll fix the fundamental problem, which is my health, those things that you think are, in quotations, stressful are no longer stressful. because you're dealing with them incorrectly. And a perfect example of that would be sleep. If you talk to your partner, your wife, your husband, and you speak to them when you've not had great sleep, you're a different person.
Oh, 100%.
When you have
100%.
bad sleep, you're a different person again. And why is that? Because your hormones are not put in place properly. It's the same principle of how you talk. If you're a businessman and you're a financial advisor, for example, and you go to a client and you've not had, and your hormones are not in place, I guarantee you're not speaking to them correctly. And whereas you fix your hormones, everything will be better. Your tone of voice, your tonality will be better. Your volume of your voice will be better. The way you perceive yourself. And last thing on top of that is there's an automatic response for a human being. When they see somebody who's in fit shape, they automatically respect them more.
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
when you have that, and you're like, I respect that person more, you're already 2 foot ahead compared to the other guy. And that for me is super important for people to understand. And the reason that's important is because if your goal is to be consistent and not be, in quotations, motivated, because you're not motivated 95% of the time, then you need to have something that's strong enough for you. The same principle is, do you ever wake up and go, do you know what? I'm not going to feed my children today. I don't feel like it. Because there's a strong growth. You need to do it. You're motivated to make them healthier and be better people. Same principle is like what you're focusing on with your goal and your health. Is like, okay, what's my goal? I really want to be really well respected in the financial industry. Okay, well, I want to have a 3-piece suit on. I want to look like Conor McGregor, and I want to walk in there with my chin up, my chest held high, and I want to walk in there like I'm the man. And to do that, whether people like say it or not, people will respect you less when you're not in optimized health.
Yeah.
No,
but I think one thing that I think I haven't heard myself before, which you touched on, is we see our health or our fitness and our life, let's say in the work we do or everything else, as disconnected. You know, like, oh, I'm going to the gym, but I don't take that next leap to be like, by optimizing my health and optimizing my body is gonna allow me to excel in all these other areas of my life. And I don't think it's such a great point, because it's rare, or I even myself haven't made that connection. And what you were talking about, how if you see someone who is in shape, that you already say that says something to the world, to how people are going to perceive you. This guy is disciplined, this guy is consistent, this guy gets up, does it when he doesn't want to, puts in the work, and you can't cheat that. That is just pure hard work, consistency, and sticking to whatever that goal is. But coming back to because it's something.
Can I say one thing on top of that? Please. See, this is a very good example. He says you can't cheat that, right? Like you need to understand that. You have to understand that with your health, there's no passing on the gene. Okay, there's some people with freak genetics, but apart from that, there's a very honest approach. There's a very part of it's like so honest about health and fitness, and your body is like, that's 100% your work. Whereas with other things, people, with social media and different stuff, everyone plays this different role and different things, and has this perception of themselves and says, I'm worth this, but they're really not. And with the health part, it's like, it's so important. It's the one thing you have that's completely 100% true. And that's in a modern day society like this, not to get too philosophical, is that the lot of non-truth things are out there, like false information. That's the one truth that you'll always have, is your health, and the one thing you have is like, that's at least your strong fundamental and your base.
No, absolutely. And I love the word you use there, is honest, because there's kind of like you said in the example, like, yes, you can, there's a way you can portray lots of images, you can put out certain types of information to make you appear in a certain way, but how you look, you can't, unless you're putting in the work. There's no one in the world that can come and fix that for you. And if you go from all of a sudden you weigh, let's say, like 94 kilos, and then tomorrow I see you like a week later and you're 70, yeah, okay, I know you can't hide that. And I think that's such an important thing to remember. But coming back to the health and fitness aspect, because this is something I was telling you earlier, I only realized yesterday. I didn't know. Or maybe you might disagree, so I'm curious to hear what you'd say. Is there a difference between fitness and health? Because in my mind, or what I've always thought, is a fit person is a healthy person, and a healthy person that means they're probably a fit person. But based on the conversation I had yesterday, I've learned that yes, you could be very fit. You could, perform at that competition. You could run far. You could lift heavy. You're fit in that area, but but you could be unhealthy in, you know, your food, your sleep, you know, all these other areas. So I thought fitness meant health and vice versa, but I've learned yesterday that it doesn't. What would you say? What are your thoughts around that?
If you're fit, and you could be really fit, but you could be even fitter if you're healthier, right? So like,
yeah,
you know what I
okay,
mean?
yeah,
But then based around that, I mean, let's say you're standard fitness, you're at a standard fitness level, and then you know, you're really focused, you're getting slightly fitter over time. Well, what about other things in your life? Like, how is your digestion? How is your mindset? Like, you don't know what you don't know, right? So, if, for example, if you say to somebody, "How do you feel today?" They're like, "I feel good." It's like, how do you know you feel good? Because it's better. Because and this has never felt better. Yeah, but I can guarantee you could probably feel even better. And then until someone gets to that next level, it's like the excitement someone gets after a training session. Like, gee, they have so much endorphins. Like, Jesus, I feel amazing. It's like, I've never felt this in my life. Same principle. They just like they've went to the new level of health. They've like, wow, like I'm really, really feeling good. So I mean, in terms of differentiating health and fitness, I would say that the healthier you are, obviously that'll aid your fitness. Obviously they'll have to get to a certain point to get fitter. You'll have to start getting your health in order, your nutrition, your sleep and stuff, to keep progressing your fitness. But in terms of the fitness and health, again, it also depends on who you are as an individual. If you're somebody who wants to, who is struggling with other parts, like people have like knee problems, shoulder problems, and a lot of reasons, a lot to do with what they eat. And if you say to somebody, "Oh, you got a shoulder problem because you've got an inflammatory response to what you're eating," they think you're nuts. And also, people don't have any discipline to even think, okay, maybe I'll do 3 months of eating what Carlo says to eat. Well, some people do, because I have a lot of clients who do follow what I say. But some people will say, like, "Oh, I'm not going to follow that because it's 3 months. I've got things going on. I'm going on summer holiday." I ate meat for 365 days in a row. I only ate steak. I didn't eat anything else. More than that, maybe like over a year. I ate like maybe a bit of fish and stuff, but I didn't eat anything. No oil on it. I literally just cooked it flat. It was a piece of meat. I had the carnivore. I followed the carnivore based diet.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
So yeah, how was your experience with? I'm curious.
I mean, it was great. It was really good, but I don't think people should live on ketosis, to be honest, based around that. And I'd done that for 365 days, so I have a good understanding of how that went. Whereas a lot of people will be like, "Oh no, I don't want to do that diet." It's like, why? Because it's not sustainable. It's like, I mean, you make up what's sustainable, right? If you follow something, it's up to you to make it sustainable and then try it and then base your knowledge about what you tried. But people make so many judgments on different stuff. And I'm like, if you have an autoimmune issue, you could strip your diet. This is an option. But I'm like, try it. Like, people don't try anything. They just try and research the hell out of this stuff, and they never actually have any application on anything. If you apply a carnivore-based diet and you're like, okay, and then I say to you, okay, introduce some fruit now, which I introduced some fruit. I don't really eat many vegetables, but I eat them sometimes. I'm not scared of them because like people like Paul Saladino and stuff like that say that they're toxic and stuff, which is like fine. There may be a truth to that, but like, to be honest, I'm all good even a bit of veg on occasion, meat, fish, fruit, honey. And for me, when I've applied that information of just meat and fruit, it's made a huge difference to people's autoimmune issues. Specifically, okay, they've lost a lot of weight, but they've got a lot of, they've changed their autoimmune issue and it'll go away. And then, for example, and I know from understanding with working with lots of clients, like I'm talking like 40 or 50 clients, even just who have come off it a little bit, their autoimmune issue will slowly come back again, and then they'll have to go back on it again. And you can see there's definitely something going on there.
There's a correlation there.
There's a correlation, and I said that to you earlier. I'm not going to speak about something I'm not a scientist on or I've done studies specifically on, but what I can say is there's something definitely there that people just will, like, people will argue. You could argue to the dawn of time about being vegan and how it's healthy and how being carnivore is healthy. But I believe from the basis of knowledge that I know, that being vegan is extremely unhealthy. It's extremely unhealthy. Everyone who comes in and they're vegan always have hormonal issues. They're weak. They have sore joints. They have, they can't sleep. They've got iron deficiencies. Like, it's pretty obvious to me, right? But what my point is someone who's an expert in veganism and is a scientist sat across the table with me and argued with me. They'd probably school me on different stuff, because they have a better level of knowledge specifically on that, and I can't argue back based around that. But what I can say is I can clearly see from working with thousands of people, it's definitely wrong, like in that regard, like it's not good on the long term. I don't like to say wrong, because you could apply a vegan diet to somebody maybe for a short term, depending if you have to, but there's lots of variables. But in a general, we have to generalize in this instance. It is objectively, in my opinion, incorrect to be vegan. It's pretty obvious. You can see from people who are vegan, their body shape, their body type is not where it should be. Let's use men, for example. Whereas if you look at a carnivore-based person who's not carnivore, let's say meat eater who eats fruit and is strict on it, it's a really, really evident to see the two difference in human beings.
Sure.
From there.
Yeah, and one thing I'm so happy you brought up the vegan carnivore example, because we were talking yesterday on the podcast, and we were saying how, so he's one of the top chiropractors in Dubai, and he was saying, he's like, Khaled, like, our lifestyles have changed so much, and so many of the issues I see nowadays are because of the lifestyle that we have now. He's like, think back to, back in the day, we're hunter-gatherers, whatever. Not only, first of all, we wouldn't have the ability to eat as much as we did, because we'd have to, put so much work to, get that. But also, we were moving, that was your life. But now it's all very insulated, the phones, the iPads, the posture, you don't walk, Deliveroo is a touch of a button away. I can get any food I want in the world. So I think one of the challenges, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, the psychological aspect, is that temptation is, it's so easy for me, the effort for me to do the wrong thing is so easy compared to the effort I need to do, the right thing. So when it comes to the psychological aspect that you were talking about, how do I start making that shift? Because, and you said this earlier, some people be like, there are people that could be super strict for like 3 months, like, for example, in your Shred 12 program, kill it, whatever. It's a goal. It's, for that period of time, in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be good. But obviously, long-term, what I've learned, and I think what you would agree on, is it's about building long-term, healthier eating habits. So the question becomes, what kind, in your experience and the people you've worked with, is 12 weeks the time frame that you would need to consistently build that in the long term, or does it take a bit longer to solidify, like, to change like your mindset completely and change how you eat completely, and to move forward in life as like, okay, now this is how I eat, this is how I'll be moving forward in my nutrition and in my health?
I think it's a lot to do with, obviously, again, it's the individual, but at the same time, some people have more problems than others. And it's also, I think, about how much you surround yourself with this, again, going back to community-based. If you're around people who are, for 12 weeks, who are much better than the people you normally hang around with, then what you'll find is that the people that, an example is like, if you go and you start, okay, hey guys, speak to your friends, say, hey guys, I'm going to follow this nutritional plan and I'm going to get shredded, all right? Say that to somebody. I'll give you a little, people who are listening, I'll give you a little task. Do that to people around you, and I guarantee this will tell you who they are. If you say to somebody, I'm going to go on a shred program, I'm going to get shredded to the bone, I'm going to feel great, and I'm going to prosper with my work. You say that to somebody around you, and you can see what the reaction is. If I said that to somebody around me, I have like 2-3 mates, right? But they'd be like, "Go on, Carl, well done. You could go for it." I guarantee you, 99% of people will be like, "Why are you doing that?" Because they're insecure themselves. They don't want you to be better. They want to keep you around. You don't want to. It's like tall poppy syndrome, right? They don't want you to get better. You want. Don't get to. Oh, he's changed. Like, look at him. And people are scared of that. They're scared of judgment. And what you need to understand is that you're not. Me included, are not at the potential of where I should be. I've got so much more potential, and sometimes I don't see it, and that's why I need to level up who you're spending time with, and you need to think to yourself, who you are is who you're around. And I know people have probably heard that many times, and it's just the most truth thing. Like, if you are hanging around with people who are going to brunch on a Saturday and feeling terrible on a Sunday, and they eating because it's Helen's birthday in the office, having cake when it's a Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. Like, come on, get a grip of yourself. Right? Come on, as a man, you should not be doing those problems. And the reason I say that is, listen, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life, of course, and I have to learn this, but I'm just speaking from in hindsight to say that when you do a lot of those silly tasks along the way, they don't add any value to your life. And what I would suggest would be, get on board with the focus of what your goal is, who you're around, and then go hard as you can on that. And as I said, complement other things what you're doing.
Yeah. And you've harped on it a couple of times in the conversation, is surrounding yourself with the right kinds of people. And always hindsight is always 2020. It's always, oh, it's so clear, I shouldn't have done that before, but it happens. It's okay, and it's part of getting you to where you are now. One thing that I've been learning about a lot recently, or I've been seeing it pop up on TikTok, and I've watched. So there's a trainer that I follow. He's like my favorite because I just love the way he talks. You probably familiar with him, James Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because he just first of all, he's very like
charismatic,
and vulgar and whatever. And he speaks to me like, oh, you fucking cunt, whatever. I'm like, that's my guy. That's the kind of. And he talked about, and I wrote this down so I say it correctly. Non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So in
walking.
Exactly. That is so, when I found out that is like for weight loss, that is more, not that it's better or worse, but it's more important than, for example, like a hard workout at the gym. Let's say going to the gym I don't know the comparison, so maybe you can help me on that. Like going to the gym 3 times a week, having like a good workout, or if I walked for like an hour every day. It's so counterintuitive that apparently, I don't know, I'm not an expert, I don't know anything, I'm the dumb guy here, that can have a bigger impact on your weight loss than, a hard workout. Because in my mind, to lose weight, I'm like, okay, nutrition is one side, but let's just focus on the training. I'm like, well, I need to go to the gym, because if I don't go to the gym, I'm not going to burn calories, I'm not going to lose weight. But he's saying, okay, you can do that, which you should. But also, if you just walked, just that walk, and that just, if you're moving and that becomes a consistent part of your life, that's going to have a bigger impact. That is so counterintuitive. What do you think?
His goal is, he's explaining fat loss, right? So he's just like fat loss. So if your goal is only fat loss, then that's, I mean, there's one, I wouldn't say it's better or worse, it complements the other one. But if you, let's say, for example, you'd have to go use it as on a scenario basis. Let's say you've got somebody who doesn't want to exercise. Well, their first goal would be just to walk more. And they will lose fat if they walk more than they eat, right? So if you've got a calorie deficit, which most people understand by now, surely, is that if you move more than you eat, you'll lose weight. So if your goal is just to lose weight, then you need to focus on the movement part. But then, then there's an aspect of like, maybe you're walking on your own and you don't feel like you're why you're motivated because there's no one around you and you're walking on your own. Then maybe you need some to do the walking, and you need a little bit of a community. So maybe you need to do the workouts as well. So it depends on the person. But what he's saying is factually correct.
So is there for in that example, let's say, okay, I'm a person, I don't want to work out, but I want to start losing weight. So okay, you'd recommend, okay, Khaled, start like just walking, start moving more. Will it get to a point, is there a cap of how much I'm going to be able to do unless I start adding like some like serious, not serious, but like going to the gym and like weight training onto that? Will I reach a cap that, okay, I'm not going to be able to lose more weight unless I either reduce my calories even further, or I'm going to have to add more strenuous training to add to that?
I mean, you can keep losing weight. You see, like, for example, I'll give you an example. If you just stop eating, what point will your body fat stop going down? It will just keep going, right? So, I mean, you would just keep reducing.
Yeah.
So again, it depends on what your goal is, right? Like if your goal is to gain muscle and lose fat, well, you're going to have to lift weights to gain muscle.
Yeah.
So if your goal is strictly fat loss, you're going to lose a lot of fat, but you're not going to have the body composition you want. So you're going to be left with...
And that's, sorry to interrupt you, but see, that's the disconnect, honestly. Like when I don't know why, and I was about to ask you, like, what's our obsession with like fucking like fat loss, man? Like, why are we obsessed with that? Like,
because people have too much body fat.
Yeah, but we're just obsessed with it. It's crazy.
Yeah, but the thing is, people have too much body fat. So because they have too much body fat, they have a problem and they want to lose body fat. But the problem is they don't know how to do it, and they've also not been taught. And I think it comes back to understanding why people can't lose it, because the information is out there, right?
Okay.
But then, so if the information is out there, if you can go on bodybuilding.com and Google a nutrition plan, and you can go onto YouTube and an AI app and say, build me a program, why can't they apply those two? Because all you need to do is follow nutrition and workouts. So why can't you lose weight? Because they don't have the application for it. They don't really know why the difference. It's the same principle. Someday you need to feel good about yourself, right? So that should be a motive, rather than going to a bar with other people who are drinking and they don't feel good as well. I would then focus on yourself, like get yourself in the right shape and use that as a motive to to go forward. And in terms of your question is like, why are we so obsessed with it? Is because it makes a big difference to your body composition, how you feel, how you look, and people always care about how they look. Everyone cares about how they look.
We do,
right?
yeah.
So if you, to look better, you need to have less body fat. But people are so obsessed with dropping body fat, but they've got a problem because they can't lose it because they're so all over the place. They've got so many things. There's everything in every street corners, Subways and McDonald's and Deliveroo's, and they completely are off attracted to the other side. Like if you look at like, for me, you call me a conspiracy theorist, but why would if you're a government, right? Why would you let people eat like that? If you want to make because people say, oh, the government care about us, but obviously they clearly don't, because if they did care, they would think, okay, how do we make our people as happy as possible? Okay, we want to make them eat good food, and they want to make them train, and they want to do things. Like if you look at when we had that in 2020 when they did all that nonsense stuff, like we had to eat. If we had to stay in the house and all that stuff, right? So basically, like if you look at like El Salvador, for example, how they treated their adverts on what to do. Like, hey guys, what you need to do is you need to exercise, you need to smoke, you need to drink water, you need to do these things. And you look at every other government, they're just like, it was just completely night and day compared to what the rest of the world were doing compared to them. So I actually think it's just an issue with like the way society is set up. I actually think the way society is set up, the actual fundamental problem is the economics of the world, like how economics works. Like I actually find it really interesting on like, there's a guy, Safdien, he's a Lebanese guy. He wrote a book called The Bitcoin Standard, and the Fiat Standard, and he explains about why why everyone's so overweight and unhealthy is because the economic problem of the Keynesian economics. And Keynesian economics is based around, from the basis knowledge of I understand, I'm no expert by any means, is that we have a consumption society. We have to have consumption. We have to have people eat badly to then be unwell, to then go to the hospital to do this. So the only way that society works, everything that you run on now is in Keynesian economics is based around consumption of bad food. When you eat bad food, you feel bad, you go to the pharmacy. It's a constant cycle of consumption. Whereas if you turned around and said to somebody, okay, all I need you to do when you go to if you go to the supermarket, watch people fill up their bags with stuff they don't need. If you just look at the basic principle of what do you need as a human, you need sunlight, lots of sun. You need good meat and fatty meat. You need good sleep, a good community around you for just general feeling like a human being, and you need to resistance training, so lift weights. If you just think of those, so think about a person who follows those principles, how much they consume. They don't consume much at all. They consume meat and fruit. They're not obsessed with all this other nonsense that you don't really need. Don't get me wrong, like if you're really wealthy, buy a Ferrari, go for it. Like I'm all for it. But my point is like the stuff that they don't need along the way. And in that journey, people were pulled to the side and like, oh, get this. So then they spend all their money on stuff they don't need. If you're rich and you get rich, then buy Ferraris, buy everything you want. I would say do it, enjoy it. But on that journey, they end up spending all their money. They end up in a situation where they're in a consumption society where they end up being eating rubbish because it's at every street corner, and you end up in a way that you're dragged in the wrong direction. And I actually think it's a fundamental economical problem of why everyone's overweight.
But I think you touched on a really important point, and in the podcast I've watched, it talks about how lots of different everyone has a vested interest. The pharmaceuticals have, the food companies have their own vested interest. How can we make this process? How can we make this food faster, cheaper, more? And there's no regard for our health and how that's going to affect us. So when you're talking about the economics, you're 100% right, because behind all the stuff we're talking about, there is all of those factors that are playing into a lot of the issues and why we have the things that we have today. But on talking about how to what was the question? It'll come back to me. But coming back to I wanted to touch on your when it comes to food. Got it. Fat loss, right? Everyone talks about fat loss, and we all talk, and exactly like I said, we all care because we want to look good. Right. What I find interesting in general, I think fat loss is a more attractive goal than building muscle. But if usually if you build muscle, which means you're going to be burning more calories, which will make you lose fat at the end. And both will give you that same goal because we want to look better. So, if in your experience and from your perspective, why does fat loss still in the spotlight rather than that? Because I feel long term, this is a much more sustainable and healthy approach to getting to that goal. But everyone wants to know, of course, and we're also fucking lazy, man. We want like, oh, I want to go to the gym one day and come out tomorrow like ripped and everything. That's the dream, but I know, I know I'm not gonna get this. So, what's your perspective on that? Why is that usually more focused on, I guess, than the muscle building when both are gonna give you the same goal?
I mean, it's a good question, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, I think if any good trainer out there will know that they will focus on muscle building. Like, I'll always focus on muscle building with my client, and I'll look at weight loss, because a lot of the only, like, if you look at somebody, like, you say, okay, I want you to lose weight, drop body fat, then what metric do you use? You've got weight is a metric to people. So I don't like to use weight. Well, it's like, well, what other metric are you going to use? You're going to use measurements, and your sister's going to say you look fabulous today, Helen. Like, that's not a good way of metric. Or I feel better, because don't get me wrong, if someone has a fundamental issue, and you know that as a trainer, this is what I'll go back to what I was saying at the start, you might look at them and say, this person shouldn't be measuring the weight because they've had maybe a previous problem with measuring the weight, and it might actually bring up that problem. So they have a psychological issue with it. So then you say to them, okay, cool, I just want you to turn up to the gym and I want you to make you feel better. That's your first goal, just feel better. That's a great goal to have. That's a general goal. But that's specific to certain people, not many people. For people who don't have an underlying issue, then you can say to them, okay, well, what's your goal? Okay, fat loss. Cool. Well, let's use a metric called weight loss. You're going to weigh yourself every week at the same time, and just once a week, and you use that as a metric to weight loss. But in the same time, we're going to use strength training alongside that weight loss. And when you use your strength training with the weight loss, you end up in a situation where they slowly, especially for beginners, they'll start building strength, right? Building muscle, building strength, and dropping fat at the same time. So you end up in a situation where they lose 6 kilos in 12 weeks, or 10 kilos in 12 weeks, and they might be 1.5 kilos more in muscle. So then they end up losing, 1.5 kilos on top of that fat loss. So they end up in a completely different body composition. So for me, like, I always focus on muscle building. But then again, it depends on the client. Like, let's say I'll give you an example. I had a woman who started with me. She's about 37. She's had 2 kids, Indian lady, and she, hadn't been eating right, having, vegetarian food, wanted to change the vegetarian food because she's realized it's not good for her, and she wants to have more meat. So I got her to say, okay, well, if you want that, Monday to Friday, to give this a balance, you eat Mediterranean style food, and then on Saturday and Sunday, you go back to your Indian-based food. That's a good balance. You something to look forward to. It's not a complete change, at least you can focus on that. And then from there, all I want you to do is come in for the group session, and I'm going to give you some basic body weight motions and some cardiovascular. Because if her doing cardio in quotations, at a fast pace with, like, say, interval training, she's going to build muscle just from using the rowing machine, just because she's so beginner. And then from there, I can get her doing a bent over row. I can do, like, some pulling exercises and stuff, because she's a little bit stronger from the rowing machine over the last 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. So it's just like, you have to build a client in so much specific to them and individually that it's hard to give a general advice to everyone. And I find that that's quite difficult on the internet now. There's so much general advice that it's, like, hard to actually understand what should I be applying here. And that's where I think there's still a very, very good use of a quality trainer and a quality person to change their life. And for me, I care about the client. I want them to be a better person in general. And when I have that focus in mind in regards to, I want to change their body composition with their food, and when they start changing their food and they start training resistance training, they just get smarter. They just become smarter people. They just become like, wow, because their brain's fueled properly. They're not feeling terrible anymore. They're sleeping more. They're just like a much better, prosperous person. So you end up with a different finished product. Not only are they lost fat, like, I guarantee you, pretty much everyone who's got results with me has end up making more money. So literally, like, if you actually get healthier, you actually become wealthier. So, I mean, that's a good little rhyme, healthier, wealthier, right?
Sure,
I should start saying that, right? But you do, right? You can apply the both. You could probably see quite a good, correlation between the two. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I really appreciate, Carlo, like, in the way you talk and the way you approach, like, your training and fitness is so. For example, in our conversation today, I'm gonna use me as an example because it's the most relevant and probably the one that would make the most sense. So for example, I hate cardio, right? Hate it. And my problem is I've gotten, like when I was living in Amsterdam, for example, besides the fact that I was walking, like my life was walking, as I was telling you, I was training, whatever, I was doing no cardio and I got results. So I think that is, and there's a problem there because it's not complete. But psychologically, I'm like, oh yeah, I don't need to do cardio. Look, I look fucking fantastic now. But if you tell me to run for like a kilometer, I'm gonna like pass out. So, and I think like using me as an example, I think that's where the problem is in all these different areas. You know, we struggle to apply a holistic thing to ourselves because once we try something that works, we feel that the other one is not important and it doesn't. Have you found that with, in your experience working with your clients?
Again, you need to see if someone doesn't like cardio, you can start them with some strength training, reduce the rest times in there, which will turn into cardiovascular anyway. So then you could do strength and conditioning based around no cardiovascular work. You could do that. And you could say, okay, what we do is I want to do a chest press, I want to do goblet squats, I want to do lunges, overhead press, and I want you to do that 4 rounds with no rest and as fast as you can with 12 reps. There's no cardio in there technically, but that will turn into a conditioning session. So you get the benefit from both. Again, I do like the aspect of cardio, but then again, it comes back, do you know what I mean? So that's how I would apply it, if that gives you some actual context behind application. But then on top of that, I would say that, okay, I'm all about going back to the, certain baseline principles.
Yes.
As a man, what is your main focus? Your main focus is to be as strong as possible, to have as good combat as possible, to be able to be someone to support the families, to have that thing. If you're in a situation where you need to run and you need to fight, are you going to be able to keep it? I'm not putting that on you, I'm just explaining. Are you going to be able to do that to the best of your abilities? Listen, I'm not the fittest in the world, I'm not the best fighter in the world, but I try to be as best I can within my lifestyle. And that keeps me honest. Sometimes I join the boxing session, I'll fight people who are way better than me, they'll batter me, but it keeps me honest. And I'll go, I have a basic fighting experience, but I think that's really important as a man. So for me, I throw myself into things I don't like. Do you think I want to go and fight someone on a Friday afternoon after a long day? Not really. But I do things that I don't like doing because my principles as a man is to understand fighting is important because I think that's an attractive thing for a woman to be with you, to knowing that their partner can fight and defend. And I think a lot of people have lost that in this society. And that's also a subconscious, because when a woman meets a guy who's got strength and power, she understands it instantly. She's like, I can feel that. And when a guy doesn't, they instantly feel it. Women are very emotionally intelligent. Yeah, so like, because they're so emotionally intelligent, they understand principles before not understanding that. So for me, it depends your goal is. If you look at a guy who's split up with a girl, or she's with a girl, then example could be like, get as strong as possible, get as fit as possible, and that will attract, rather than going chasing the girl specifically and try to find another one. Just work on yourself and they'll come to you. And that will be a better way of doing it. So again, it would be focusing on is like, what are the fundamentals as a man? Fight, being able to eat properly. I would say basic cooking skills. It's something I probably need to improve on a little bit myself, but like basic cooking skills, and that, because that shows like being able to, and then also an aspect of making money, because money is, again, like weight loss, is only the main metric that people use to use as someone who's like been able to, I don't know the word for it, to rely on them.
Sure, yeah,
because they can bring in stuff, they can bring in money to then support the family, and I think that's, for me, it doesn't matter if you want to do it or not. If you do stuff that you don't like enough, you actually level up automatically.
100%. You know what's funny on what you were talking about? I agree with so many things that you said. I'm going to use me as an example in this. So when me and my wife met, we've been together now, coming like 3 years now. When we met, I was in the best shape of my life, like ever. And it's funny how over the last 3 years, but and it's very psychological, because back in the day, why I was in such good shape, or why I was pushing myself, because it came from, pain. It came from heartbreak. So that was my motivation to go. I'm like, I'm going to show everyone, I'm going to look the best. Fuck everyone. I'm going to do this. And then, and this is not her fault. This is all me. But then that thing that I've always wanted, that loving relationship, someone to spend my life with you. And that was always my dream. And then I feel like when I'm reflecting on myself, when I got that, I got complacent. And I have, I put my hand up and I'm, nowhere to hide, nothing to say about that. And I think, and me personally, I think that can happen to people sometimes is, there's that whole famous fixed mindset versus growth mindset, and I feel like, and I've had people on the podcast and we've talked about mindset, how you can have it in certain areas and fixed in others. But I think, and I was so good. And, they say it takes 21 days technically to build a new habit and whatever. And I was so consistent for 3 years. So while I was living there, and then when I came back here, even during COVID, it was locked down. I put 2 couches together, made it bench press, something. And I feel like since then it's been a decline, like a slow, decline, and you don't notice it until it's, too late. So how, for someone like me, if we were working together and I was getting advice from you, because I think this does happen to people, you do fall off the wagon. And I feel it gets, and that brings in guilt as well, because like you've done it before and you know what you have, and now look where you are, and there's like shame and all those kind of things. So how do you start reframing that mind? Because listening to all the things you said, I'm like, fuck, man, he's like so right. But that doesn't mean now after our podcast, I'm gonna get up and like go fucking run. Like, yeah, Carlo said it. It's I don't know how to. It's been let's say a struggle to trying to get back to the mind more than the body, the mindset I had at the time. So what would you say to someone like, for example, like me or others who are struggling to get back to, the let's quotation mark, the glory days?
I would say that your glory days were based around you finding as an attractive woman as you possibly can.
Yes.
And to do that, you were like, okay, I need to find a woman that's as attractive possible for me to go to the standard that I want. I need to be in this shape.
Yes.
And that's what motivated you to get there.
Yes.
So with my understanding, and more I've learned over time, is that there is an aspect of why men should use women as a focus of leveling up. Because the only reason men really level up is to attract more of a partner or get gratification from other people.
Sure.
So they're like, okay, well, I want to... So, I mean, the ins and outs of it would be have a goal of why do you want to get healthy, right? As before, your goal to get healthy was to get the woman. So why can't you still be the guy that is... the man, like the guy who's everyone wants to be around, sure. Girls are attracted to. And for most men, the only reason they get up in the day, they do still like the attention. They are different to women. I think that the more I understand this, I'm contemplating saying it, to be honest, is that if you look at a woman, right, they care about certain things. They have certain morals and certain principles. You, as a man, want to find a woman that's not had a lot of numbers, right? Mm-hmm. You want to have maybe one partner before or none at all. Mm-hmm. So you're always attracted to that, right? Sure. If you get a girl who's had the opposite and you meet a guy who's not, sometimes the girl, and this is just from experience, I'm not an expert in this, but just from you asked me a question, I just think from everything that I've been learning and understanding on life and being old enough to realize that a lot of the women will be looking at a guy who's been with a lot of women because he'll have a certain understanding of confidence. He has certain stature, so he attracts. Like I've never heard the stat of like 5% of the men in the world sleep with like 90% of the women because
what?
Yeah, it's
is
like
that real?
I don't know where to put this quotation, but it's something ridiculous.
We'll
like there's very small amount of the men are sleeping with all the women, and so the women have less men to pick from. So
interesting.
So you've got, it's not like 50-50. There's a lot of men who will not. And that's why it goes back to a different subject is why this like feminist nonsense about like, oh, men doing this and men doing that and women have the hard times. Women are a really great time if you look at the basic principles, and men are a lot of the time, like Jordan Peterson talks about it.
Yeah,
like
he does.
Men built the whole city, right? Like there's so many weird dynamics in this. But my understanding is that with women they'll be attracted to that, and so for men their focus is to attract more women, and their focus. And maybe it's come to the point where people are starting to realize, well, from I understand there are the people who I listen to, is that men, it's okay to be with other women and have like a main woman and have, do things if you travel and you do things as a man because you have that instinctive thing that you want to find another woman. and you have that, so you're always driven. But there's a weird social dynamic that happens if you notice it. Every time a guy has a girlfriend, they do get complacent. And why is that?
Yeah, we do.
It's because we've lost that thing inside us to become better, because we don't look for the woman anymore. We've already achieved it. What's the next? Nothing.
Yeah.
Whereas with a woman, you'll find that they don't always I wouldn't say don't care as much. If a guy was to go and do other things with other women and things like that, but she had, he was very helpful to that woman. There's guys out there that do that, and I've watched them and I've seen them have that understanding of things, and they end up actually being still really driven, really happy, and they feel a bit better. Whereas all the guys in the world are now like, oh, I've got it, and there's something they lost something in there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I feel.
Yeah, and
exactly that, 100%.
And I think that with a lot of these people, if you take away the understanding and you just sat down with a man and a woman and you said, do you care if I do this in my life? But I always focus on you're my wife, but sometimes when I go away or do whatever, I have a little bit more leniency with this kind of stuff. But I'll always supply you with everything that you need. I'll care for you. I love you. That doesn't change anything. But there's something inside me that I can't be with one person.
Sure.
Then I think that can actually keep that person really focused and driven, and it keeps that man. If you ever see a man like that, you can see that they're still driven and focused. Yeah. Like if you look at a single man compared to a man like that, the single man's always like more driven. Usually, not always.
Yeah.
So, but then the woman, if you actually sat a woman down and said, would you care if I provide you with, what do you need as a woman? I need you to look after me. I need you to provide me with a family. I need you to give me support, and I want you security.
Yeah.
And you provided all those things, but you still did what you wanted. You might actually find that she would be like, okay, I'm happy with that. But a lot of people don't actually have that set up in life. They end up and then they end up getting into this weird modern day dynamic.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that is the answer, but it's something that I've read a lot and I've been looking at a lot.
Sure.
And that doesn't mean, and what I've understood is that doesn't mean you love your wife any less. It actually makes them love them more, and you really care for them. But you have to understand, as a man and a woman, we aren't the same.
Yeah.
We're different.
We are.
We're so different. And because modern day society tells us, oh, men and women are equal, we're certainly not equal. We might be equal in regards to roles. Like your effectiveness of roles is 50% of the world economic situation, because you provide life as a woman. You're a woman who provides life, which is incredible, which is one of the most important things. It is the most important thing in the world.
Absolutely.
But men are different, and we provide something else.
Sure.
And when we come together in unison, we are amazing, and we're so loving, and we appreciate each other, and it's completely 50-50.
Yeah.
But we're different, and and men are supposed to do certain things and women are supposed to do others. But now again, I think it's a Keynesian economics problem, where people have like lost touch of what a true relationship is. And when you realize that, when you look at the problem of society with economics, you realize that what history is being told is, what as they say, history is told by the victorious, right? So when you say that, who made up history? Is it correct, or is it is like Chinese whispers? It's slowly just been completely diversed into something different, because when someone tells you history, it sets up the future. So when you say that this is what happened in the past, like, okay, well, that's normalized. It's the same principle as, like, I don't know if this is a good comparison, but the guy who ran like the 4-minute mile.
Yeah.
Once he done it, everybody done it.
There you go.
And it's like, I'm not sure if that's a good comparison to what I'm trying to say, but it's like the same thing, right? You don't realize that you believe what is told to you. And I'm like, is that the truth? Because there's something inside a lot of men in modern day society there's a twinkle in their eye that's gone. They don't feel like themselves. They don't feel prosperous. They don't they don't feel pumped, and they don't feel like, I want to get myself, I want to get a suit, I want to be the man. And it's like a weird, there's something not right. And as I said at the start before we started the podcast, is I'm not an expert in these fields, because with certain podcast people are super just intellectual and studied on these kind of things. I'm just giving you a general perspective of what I think and what I've learned.
And that's exactly why I wanted you on the show. I want to hear what Carlo thinks. But in summarizing what you said, I think what I've taken from that, and what's very clear, besides, the roles of men and women, and why like our motivations when you're single are different to when you're in relationships and you do get complacent and it happens, is I think the way to address that, what I've learned listening to you, is from day one, the motivation or the goal has been wrong. Because the complacency happens, and you hear this with like Olympic athletes that have trained their whole lives, for that goal. They get the goal, then it's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
You know, what's after. So I think the goal setting your goal, your motivation for your fitness and for your health cannot. I think having it based on that is too superficial, because there's no depth to that, because once you got it, there's nothing else. So for example, I'm again reflecting my situation. Okay, I got the girl, I got married. You know, I've reached exactly where I want to go, and then it was like, oh, now what? But now I'm finding, or I'm trying to, my motivation is changing. I'm like, okay, now there's a future, kind of like what you're saying, like I want to provide for my wife. I want, kids, I want to play with my kids, like all these kind of things. So bring it back to all this. I think the motive, and I tell people this all the time, is fear and pain are probably the strongest motivators, but I feel that they're limiting, because at some point this is going to go away. You'd hope so. I feel, at some point it's going to go away, and then you need a new, more positive type of motivation to get you there. So your motivation, for example, for going to the gym, for building muscle, whatever, is aesthetics part of it? Absolutely. Let's not bullshit around here. But it has to be, I believe if you want it to be sustainable.
There's a reason for that aesthetics.
Thank you.
There's a reason you need to be fit and six pack. Why are you doing it?
Exactly. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that six pack. It's bigger than that. But coming back to, I wanted to talk about calorie counting with you. So obviously, and this is again my experience. I learned growing up, like, oh, counting calories is important, whatever. Fine. But the fucked up thing, and what I only learned this year was, and maybe I'm stupid for just realizing it this year. So they say as long as you're in a calorie deficit, you'll lose weight. To a certain extent, yes, that's true. But I watched a podcast, and this guy, he's a geneticist, and he says that not all calories are equal. So yes, technically, I could eat McDonald's every fucking day, have that one meal. It'll be about maybe 2,000 calories. I'm in a 500 calorie deficit, and for average man, 500 calorie deficit. Yes, I'll lose weight, but my health is going to be absolute trash. So I think there needs to be, when you think about that, not all calories are equal. Like the calorie I'm getting for like that Big Mac, or the calorie that you would get, for example, from like that steak that you had. Yes, the numbers might be the same, but the impact is completely different. So when it comes to, what's your perspective around counting calories? Do you see it as just a helpful tool to keep you in check? Because again, coming back to what I was saying earlier, that seems to, I think a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today, it seems in the fitness industry, whatever, it seems too surface level. There's more, you have to go deeper to have sustainability. That's what I'm taking from this conversation. So what would you say about the whole calorie counting aspect?
Again, it depends on the client, right? Like if that person can't count calories, and they're going to be overwhelmed, and they're going to be like, oh, I don't want to count calories. Then yeah, if you're someone who's an IBFF pro, which is like a bodybuilding, and you want to get as lean as possible, it will come to a point where you're going to have to count the calories, because that's not a normal human being. You're not supposed to be that lean. If you want to be like at a certain body fat, which is lean, which is a six pack, still a six pack. It's not. I mean, like when these guys go lean, they go real lean, like so lean. That's off normality.
Yeah.
But having a six pack is normality for a human being. You should really have that. And
really, you think you consider?
Yeah,
really?
Sure. I think everyone should be. If you're optimized health and you're not counting calories, you're eating the right food, you're moving enough, and you're training, you automatically have a six pack.
That's so interesting, because from my perspective, I've always been like for example, to get a six pack, number one, I've never had it, but I feel the amount of work I'm gonna have to put in to get that is not worth the sacrifice that I'm gonna make. And that comes to, again, what you're talking about, how every client, every person has their own goal, has their own things that they're comfortable with sacrificing.
But that's based around your sacrifice. So for example, let's say, for example, you, or like, I don't want to sacrifice those things, but what I'm saying is, like, if you just eat like you're supposed to, and don't use it as sacrifice or not sacrifice, just eat as you're supposed to, right? Yeah. You eat lots of meat, lots of fish, lots of fruit, and you start training and you start walking enough. What's going to happen? You'll have a six-pack eventually. You'll just slowly integrate your body into that position. That's not that hard when you put it in perspective like that, right? So that's why I get a lot of results with clients, because I just sit them down and say, I'm not going to give you... I used to make a full booklet and tell them to read it all, and then it's too much. I just sit them down and say, you need to eat a lot of meat, a lot of fruit, and you need to do it consistently with the right people around you who are all supportive and helpful, and you need to change the people around you. There's also other aspects. You need to You need to train resistance training consistently, again with the right people and with the right trainer that you can vibe off of. And you need to walk. You don't need to walk. You can do other things. You could do other things. You know what I mean? I lift weights. If I do 10,000 steps and you do 10,000 steps, I'll burn more calories because I'm picking up weights all day.
Sure.
So I'm doing other things on top of that. But just as a measurable result, 10,000, 10,000. Then you're going to end up, your body will slowly integrate into that shape, which will be an optimized human. And an optimized human should have a six-pack. You should be, not a six-pack, it doesn't have to be shredded, but you should have abdominal definition. Like good abdominal definition, I would say.
Very, very interesting. You know, you're the first person probably ever spoken to that's like, yeah, everyone should have a six-pack. And you talk about it so normally. For me, my whole life, I remember when I was younger, like 15, 16, and obviously back then I would go, me and my friend would go after school. We're like, okay, yeah, we're going to go to the gym. But before we go to the gym, we'd walk into Spinneys. We'd get like sandwiches, Pepsi, chocolate, chips. Go eat that and then go train. Like just
but that's probably
things.
a fundamental. So that's what I'm saying. Like you right now, your sacrifice is in different levels.
Yes, exactly.
You might have had the fundamental. You've been doing that for a long time in your life. So to you to get healthy, it just takes like, okay, I just cut out fizzy juice. For me to get healthier, I need to cut out dates. I eat too many dates. That's a personal thing. I eat too many dates. Yours is Pepsi. That's way above where I'm at.
Yeah.
So your perception is like, oh, I'm just cutting out fast drink. And anything below that is like crazy stuff. But it's just because it's your world. That's your world.
Exactly.
But my world, I'm cutting out dates to get shredded. And it's like, okay, well, you can see the difference there.
You know, Carlo, I really appreciate how I like people who make things simple. You know, because it's I think we make it in our perspectives. It is even speaking to right now, everything he's saying, I'm like, he's right. It's so simple, but now you're gonna leave, and in my world, it's gonna become so complex and whatever. But it's just, I think how we are.
I don't want to touch on that. That's what I'm saying. Is like, people overcomplicate. It's like, oh, I've got the kids. I've got this. It's like, here, man, like you need to do 4 hours a week. You can do 4 45-minute sessions, which is like. And then plus your travel time, so that's 90 minutes, 4 times a week, all in, plus travel time. And in that travel time, you can probably listen to a podcast in the car, you can do other stuff. You're doing 45 minutes, 4 times a week. You're doing some walking and you're eating properly. That's all you need to do. If you can't do that, I'll give an example. Client said to me, I've got schedule. My schedule is too packed. You make that schedule. You make that schedule. You made that schedule and you did not put your health priority. You're making up all this nonsense about you've got to do this and I've got to do that. Oh, but what about my lifestyle? My job tells it. You picked that job. You don't have to do that job, but then I have to if I don't have a job. Okay, well, instead of earning 50K, earn 35K and feel amazing and have an amazing life. Instead of earning 50K, you are making these decisions. You didn't wake up one day and be like, oh God, I have to do this job. I have to. It's slave labor. No, you make all those choices. Everything that's happened bad in my life, I would say most things, not everything, but it's been my fault.
Sure.
And people don't have any sort of aspect of responsibility.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is like, if you have to set up your schedule and what you go based around what I said earlier is about if you fix your health, everything else will be better.
Yeah.
You actually understand, and this happens with a lot of clients. Mums and stuff come to me and they're like, I don't have any time. They come and they're like, Jesus, I feel so much better. I talk to my kids better. I make the right food decisions. My kids are eating better. My kids are healthier. My kids, like someone the other day said, my kids are sick all the time. They're catching it in school. I was like, your kids are not catching anything in school. Their immune system's shot to shit because they don't eat any fats, animal fats. They're eating chicken all the time, which is not a great source of protein. It's like you want to have your fattier meats, which is a much better source of protein than chicken, and they're not in the sun at all. You're slabbing them with SPF 50, which is another thing I'll talk about. Is like the fact is that people put on so much SPF, and like you're from this side of the world, right? So you should be getting more tan than me. I'm Scottish, right? So I don't need as much sun as you, and so I get a certain amount of sun. You need more sun because that's your genetics.
Yeah.
And when you have that amount of sun, that helps your hormones, and when your hormones are better, everything else is better. So then your schedule, everything else is better. So you're putting your markers up. Put your health first. Figure out when you can figure out what your schedule. Once you figure out the health schedule, build everything around that, and that will make your life so much better, because everything will be better. You don't have to have mood swings. You can do your job better because you have the fundamentals of exercise and health in there. Another thing is, people's like, I'm so busy, I had nothing in the fridge. People are so scared to be a bit hungry as well. They're like, oh, I'm so busy. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're not going to die. You can live like 50 days without food and about 3 days without water. Drink some water. Be hungry. Just be hungry. Yeah. They're scared of discomfort. That's the problem.
And you, I'm so happy you said that. We've become, I think, one of the big issues is we've put such a high priority on
comfort,
on comfort and feelings. You know, I deserve to feel happy. Yeah, I deserve. You know, why should I not? You know, I want to feel happy. And sometimes, I'm not saying this as like a guy that doesn't go through these things, whatever. I'm just speaking from experience. Sometimes I'm like, when I look at people and they're like, oh, I just want to feel better. Like, I want to, even if you're doing the right things, I'm like, but if you just feel like not happy for a while, like whatever. Like we all have bad days, whatever. I had a bad day this week, you know, I'm quiet, whatever. I'm short, whatever. I wake up the next day, I'm like, okay, I'm good again. You know, it's gonna happen, but we've placed now the conversation's going off a little bit, it's fun. And we place such a high priority on feelings, and like, I deserve to feel happy, and not just happy all the fucking time, that anything that goes against that is something that I shouldn't do.
And it's really, really important. You have to understand that you have to work for happiness. If you want to be happy, you have to work for that. Or you never really nothing in life is worthwhile unless you work for it. Like, if someone turned around and gave you $1 million and you worked for $1 million, what would the difference in feelings be? It'll be a lot different because you worked for that principle. And also behind it, you have a lot more skill sets to make that to in comparison. And as you said, like, if you're not constantly happy, is like, it's not, the goal is not always what the goal is the goal to always be happy. No, the goal is whatever the goal that you want, but at the same time, you need to have the understanding of, to have happy times, you have to have sad times. And when people don't understand that discomfort is the goal, be as uncomfortable as possible for as much time. A saying I always say is, be as uncomfortable as possible for a better life, and have comfort, as much comfort as you can for a worse life. And if you think of those principles, you think, okay, well, if I'm really comfortable all the time, I'm actually going to have a worse life. Whereas if I'm constantly training when I don't feel like it, and I'm doing things like I don't feel like doing, I'll actually have the better parts. And Joe Rogan talks about it. He says, when you put your feet up atop at the end of the day, and you crack, even if you did crack open a beer, and you were like, I worked for the last 3 weeks on this project, that is going to be such a cool aspect of feeling for the next 3 hours, compared to the guy who just does the same thing every day. And it's the same principle as food. If you eat all the time and like, oh, I want to eat this, I want to eat that, like, obviously I want to eat that as well. I want to do this. I also want to go and punch a guy because he's been annoying to me, or I want to just, you can't just do things because you want to do it. It's like a spoiled brat.
Yeah,
it's like, you want to do this and I want to eat like this because I deserve it. It's like, listen, you need to get the principles in place first, and we're all working on ourselves, me included. I'm nowhere near where I should be. Of course, in the next 2 years, I'll look back and think, what a guy, you didn't know nothing. We'll always be like that, and I realised that. But it's really important to get the fundamentals correct, in my opinion.
No, 100%. And what you're talking about when it comes to being uncomfortable, I've realized, over the last few months, I've been doing a lot of, introspection, whatever. I'm like, oh, wow. And my dad even called me out. He's like, bro, you're too fucking comfortable right now. And I'm like, you know what? You're 100% right. Sometimes you just have to, you have to call it like it is, and it's okay. And we will get back to a more positive place. But that example that you used, I remember of I don't want to go to the gym, but I went. That aspect, I did some. I remember in Amsterdam, man, it'd be freezing in the winter. I'd just put on those legging things, some shorts, and I walk to the gym, and I walk back home, and even when it's dark, it's raining, whatever, I fucking got up and I went. That feeling of triumph, if I did that, whatever else happened in my day, I didn't give a fuck, because I've accomplished so much. And when it comes to you talked about, you have to work for the happiness. When I go to the gym, I, even though it's a simple thing for me, it's personally, I'm like, oh, it's such an accomplishment. It feels like I've done the right thing today. I'm moving in the right direction. But I wanted to come on to just when it comes to like training specifically, because I've been going through this in my head. So I've been doing pretty much the same workout plus minus for the last like 3 years. And I told you it worked, but it worked when other things, were happening in my life. So my question always becomes, and I choose these exercises because, again, I don't do the other ones because I hate them because, again, kind of worked on, it's uncomfortable. So when it comes to training, does it really, if let's say I'm not like an athlete training for like a thing. I'm just trying to, get fit, build muscle. Does it really matter what exercises I do? Or should I be, is this something that I should be changing every, once in a while, to do that? Or that doesn't matter? That's my question.
I mean, if you go out this door, right, and you go and look for a butcher shop and you go and walk about and you're like, okay, I'm going to find, you'll eventually come across a butcher shop, right? Eventually. But if you put on the sat-nav butcher shop, you'll get there much quicker. So what is your goal? Like, you have to have a target in mind, right? You have to know your path and you have to have structure and you have to have like an actual guidance to know where you're going.
Yeah.
So if you're just going around doing that, yes, you will maybe eventually get to that goal or find the butcher shop in my analogy. But you have to have, if you have like a structured plan, you're going to get there so much faster. And even with that being said, find the butcher shop, you might not find it because you depend on your goal. If you have a really high goal, then you still might not find it. But in a general aspect, if you're just to drop body fat and stuff, you might eventually get there, but you might not. But the main focus is to actually have a structured plan. And a lot of the time, it's about asking people who's around you the right answer.
Yeah.
Like if you want to, you want to grow in terms of your drop body fat, but you don't know how to do it, that's also, you're just guessing it, but you might think you know.
Yeah.
So that's why expert advice is always the right thing to do. And then once you do the expert advice, if you want to carry on, carry on. If you don't, you don't. But you definitely should be doing, even if you're a businessman, if you're a billionaire, I bet a billionaire has a mentor. I bet a billionaire's got a business coach. So why doesn't everyone
Yeah, no, exactly. And by the way, that example you use is I love that analogy because it's not that you might find it, you still can get there, but it's about the efficiency and that it comes back from, you re-engineer from the goal that you're trying to achieve. Carlo, for my last few questions, I wanted to round up with this one because I think this is one that's so important and one that I don't understand. So we've talked today about discipline, we've talked about eating right, we've talked about the importance of training, walking, all these kind of things, right? But coming back to the nutrition side, because I feel that is the side where most people, we all struggle the most. Like, it's easier for me to go to the gym 3-4 times a week because that's like an activity, is just something that I do, than to come home and be disciplined, with the way I eat. And it comes from, and I think when it comes to emotional regulation, like when we're stressed, we're hungover, we're out, I want the nastiest food, I want that just to fill that thing. And by building these habits, I think it does take time, but also there's an element of guilt that comes with it. Like sometimes we'll have a meal and after you'll be like, oh, fuck, man. Like I feel so guilty for having that meal, So what advice would you have for someone like me? How do I manage my guilt, or what are the tools, or maybe I need to reframe my perspective around that? How do I improve that? How do I manage that, the emotional side?
I would work for it. I would, again, go back to work ethic. I would be like, okay, I'll have a cheat meal on a Saturday night and then enjoy it. Really enjoy it.
Cheat like whatever, or there's a limit to the cheat? Yeah, you want.
Whatever. it depends, but pretty much. You can have a pizza and a pasta both at the same time with a cake on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
But it's a Saturday night. That doesn't mean you put the leftovers in the fridge and have a little bit in the morning. You have to have structure behind stuff. If I go into the fridge, right, anywhere I go, right, and there's at home and there was bad food there, I'm going to eat it. I'm human. I'm the same as you. Yeah. But I understand certain principles not to have that in place.
Yeah.
So 95% of the time I'll eat really good, and then on occasion I'll go and eat a burger, and I don't really like fries, but I'll have a burger and maybe like some cake or something.
So yeah, and so again, it comes back to what you're saying is discipline.
Discipline, but also structure, and knowing this knowledge, knowing that when I give someone a nutrition plan, I will have 1, 2, 3 things, steps. It won't just be the nutrition plan, it'll be steps, recommendations to do.
Yeah.
Like number 1, I even remember off the top of my head, is go in the house, get a plastic bag and throw out all the food. Even if it's new food that you've not, waste the money, throw it in the bin, throw the rubbish, the crap crisps in the bin, because what will happen is you won't buy it again.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, that's something that I've had to start doing, because if I have if the chips are in the house, it's game, it's done.
Don't have it in the house.
So I stopped. I'm like, once a week, I'll be allowed to like
take that
bring it up.
popcorn and throw it away.
For the record, I didn't get that, but we're gonna have to have a discussion about it later. Damn, I thought he wouldn't see it. Carlo, man, I just have 2 more questions for you. These are questions that I ask all my guests. First of all, looking back either professionally or personally, when I ask you the question, what are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
Proud of, I would say that from knowing me when I was younger to where I get to now is a very hard understanding of how I've got here from who I used to be. I think that, listen, everyone's had their own journey and everyone's had their own struggles. But from where I was to where I know the knowledge that I know now, like I remember when I was like, honestly, I'll open with it. I was 19, 20 years old. I couldn't really read and write that well. I was really bad. My grammar was really bad. And even now, it's not the greatest. I've got strong points. I've got weaker points. But I was able to, that's one thing that I wasn't good at. But the amount of improvement and self-development I have over this time has made me proud specifically.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And when you reflect on the person that you were, if you're happy or at least you feel like you've made progress to the person that you are now, I think that is the most, for any person, that is the most satisfying feeling because you did it. No one else did that, and you put in that work. And for my last question, Carlo, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
My message would be to look after yourself and understand that everything that you do in regards to like your work, everything, whatever your goal is, it always understands is the fundamental of your health. Yeah. And without the fundamental of the health part, then you're really just guessing and you're just really trying to like fight your way through a situation where you're always pissing against the wind. Yeah. You always try to go one way and it's coming right back at you because your fundamentals not correct. And my suggestion would be get your health in order and stop giving yourself excuses that this is happening, that's happening, and because a lot of this is happening, that's happening because you're not in the right place mentally, and you're not feeding yourself the right food, and you're not getting enough sun, and you're not doing these basic principles. Yeah.
So get the fundamentals and prioritize your health. Yeah. Awesome. Carlo, I want to say, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been so much fun. I've loved the conversation. I've really learned, so much from you, and it was kind of therapeutic for me because I was asking you so many questions that I've had about myself. So I really appreciate, the honesty and, the knowledge and expertise that you've shared with us today. People want to reach out with you, work with you. Where can we get in touch? What's the best place?
Carlo Milo Fitness. That's where I have my Instagram page. Probably the best place to contact me. I'll just keep that as my main focus, is my one Instagram page, Carlo Milo Fitness.
Carlo Milo Fitness. We're going to put that in. We'll put that in the show notes. Carlo, man, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. Guys, everyone listening, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Please make sure to like, follow, and share. And subscribe to the podcast. I hope it helps pod on Instagram. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.